Hello friends, my name is Sonia. This is Sonia with an I. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a book review of my June reads. I had a fantastic June. I really had a fantastic 2024. I don't know if it's the fact that I started a booktube channel that's really just kind of encouraged me to be doing all this reading of fantastic books, or if it's just like it's my reading season. But I've really had wonderful months. I read 11 books this month, which is really great for me. I tend to average between 8 and 12. And so like just hit it right in the middle. I was looking at one of my older book journals and I used to average like 5, and there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you get and you love that, I mean, go for you. But I'm kind of proud of my progression, I guess is what I was trying to say. The books that I'm going to be going over today are books that I've read in June, and some of them also were part of my Read the Rainbow Challenge. The books that I have already reviewed in my Read the Rainbow reviews, I won't go into big detail about. I'll probably just tell what I rated it and move on, because I don't want it to be, I don't want it to be too much the same. So let's talk about books. The first book that I read in June was Clammed Up by Barbara Ross, and this was part of the Clam Bake Mysteries. I rated it a 2.5. It was part of my red entry of my Reading Rainbow. My next was my green entry of my Reading Rainbow, and that was Buried in a Bog. Buried in a Bog was part of my Reading Rainbow. Sorry about that. And I rated it 5 stars. It is by Sheila Conley. It's part of the County Court Cozy Mysteries. It had Ireland. It had a grandma. It had a likable character. I can't wait to read the rest of it. Fantastic book. The next book that I read was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. In Remarkably Bright Creatures, I rated this 5 stars. It was incredible. I can't stop thinking about it. Actually, originally rated it 4.5 stars, and then I bumped it up to 5 because I cannot stop thinking about this book. And it's probably been my most suggested book of this year. In this book, Tori, I think her name is Tova, her husband has passed, and she lost her teenage son. And it was tragic. And she is just she's older now, and she's just kind of living through life. Like, most of her friends are retired and doing that whole retirement thing, and she's working as a cleaning lady at the aquarium, and she loves to clean. She finds such solace and peace in cleaning. And at this aquarium, there is a beautiful Pacific octopus named Marcellus, and she has over time formed this bond with Marcellus. And the story is it's gorgeous. Marcellus, first of all, has his own voice. So he has chapters in which are told from his point of view, which I adore. I love me an anthropomorphic moment. If you listen to the audio, his voice is he's incredible. The love that comes out from this story and her healing, like her dealing with the loss of her son Eric, and how she finds out what truly happened over time, and how Marcellus has a hand in helping her. It's just lovely. Absolutely a lovely story. If you have not read Remarkably Bright Creatures, I would suggest this one strongly. It is not a cozy mystery. There are some sad parts in it. There are a few times that I teared up. One time I had to grab tissue, but it's a very heartwarming story. And it has that cozy moment because of, found family. So beautiful book. I highly suggest it. The next book that I read in my June reading journey was An Escape Goat, part of the Zen Goat Mysteries by Jana Rollins. I rated this book 4 stars. After finding some lost family, Callie, the main character, finds some lost family through a DNA test, and she ends up going to this family in New Hampshire. They have a farm, and she decides, she's lived in this big city, and she has decided that she is going to open a goat yoga studio at this farm. So she has worked really hard to do this. She's building this relationship with her aunt and uncle, who she has never met, that she found through DNA testing, and she's not quite a country girl, so she's trying to figure out that whole farm thing. And in the story, the very first customer is this very rich group of girls. This the main girl is very bossy, and she has this social media presence, and she of course ends up being murdered. And then there's the investigation. I will tell you, Bugsy the goat is adorable, and I do have a thing I love goats, so I enjoyed it. The story was a fun little romp. It was a great little beginning. There were a few little things that I'm not even going to complain about. There was just, everybody has whatever. It was 4 stars. Is a great read for me. I look forward to reading the next one. This is a new book in the series, I believe, from a fairly new author as well. So I really enjoyed it. I believe, I don't want to say there. I was thinking she was somebody else, but I don't want to misquote. So Jana Rollins and a Scapegoat, I gave it 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. The next book, if I think about this, the next book was probably definitely my most favorite brand new book, brand new author to me book that I've read this year. It's called Sniffing Out Martyr by Callie E. Benjamin, who is also V.M. Burns. It is, I loved this book. And I don't know if I loved this book because it had to do with a teacher, or it was really well written. But to tell you a little bit about it, I gave it 5 stars. There is Bailey the bloodhound, and his owner, Priscilla, they call her Prissy, or Priss. She is at the end of her teaching career. She went back to her hometown, she started teaching, and she has realized that teaching is not for her. The pressures and all of that, she's just like, I'm just not going to do this. So she ends up writing a children's book based on her dog Bailey. It ends up becoming a bestseller, so she stopped teaching and she's focusing on writing. Well, as she is going through this experience, she is also bumping into some mean girls and things that she went to high school with, and one of them in particular has been really cruel to her. She's on the PTA board or school board, and she's trying to get all of these reading program, therapy dog sort of programs. They're just fluff, and she's trying to get rid of them. And Pris is really trying to fight this because she's like, why are you doing this? These programs are beneficial. And she ends up kind of having a tete-a-tete with this former mean girl who is still a mean girl. And of course, then, the mean girl gets it. And so now, there we go. There's a murder that ensues, the investigation. I absolutely love the main character. She's level-headed. She doesn't put herself in uncomfortable situations. She really and truly loves helping children. Her dog Bailey is just adorable. The story just came together beautifully. I read it in 24 hours. I could not stop reading it. I absolutely loved it. And as I said, this was a new author to me, but this is a new series this year, and it was just 5 stars and phenomenal. Thank you very much to Amy Marie. Amy Marie mentioned it in one of her vlogs or one of her reviews, and I'm so glad I read this. It was one of my library holds, so fantastic book. The next book I read was a continuance. This was number 14 in the Library Lovers Mysteries by Jen McKinley. It's called Fatal First Edition. I really enjoyed this one as well. This was one of those locked door type mysteries. The main characters, Lindsay and Sully, are on a train. And they're in this book, they're going to these book binding seminars because she's a librarian, and there ends up being this book that shows up, but it ends up being a very, very valuable book, which is called Strangers on a Train, which is really funny because as I was doing this book, I was doing a mystery book puzzle, and Strangers on a Train was featured in that. So I thought, oh, that's so cool how that ties together. I'd show you the puzzle, but I already sent it to the book resale place. So sorry about that. Anyway, it's a Blue Mountain puzzle, and it's called Mystery Books. I found it on Mercari, so, and it didn't cost very much. Anyway, Sully and Lindsay are on an adventure. They're doing this. That book shows up. They hear a bunch of commotion in the car next to them and then find out that someone has been murdered. There's the investigation. My only complaint about this book is that the Lemon is my favorite character in this book, and she wasn't in this one. I mean, she like had like, you know, they talked about her, but I like more lemon in my book. I like the lemon. I like my tea with lots of lemon in it. So anyway, I really did enjoy this. It was another 5-star read. Y'all, I had some 5-star reads this month, and I mean, I'm here for it. I am absolutely okay with having 5-star reads. My next 5-star read is Swamp Spies, part of the Misfortune series. This was number 26. And yes, you heard that right. 26. I cannot believe there have been 26 books. I started reading this book last year, like January of 2023. I started reading this series, and I binged this series, and now I'm completely caught up. Like the next one is already out, something in beignets, and I need to read it. So in this one, we have our main character, Fortune, and her, you know, rescue team, the wonderful Gertie and Idabel, and they are going to the Middle East because Carter is been captured. And they get Carter, they get back, and then there's some other drama that ensues, and of course then there is a dead body, and they have to investigate. I don't want to get too much into it because it's way into the series, and I don't want to, you know, spoil any spoilers for anybody. But the heart in this book, first of all, the humor in this book, this is the funniest series. I hee-haw laughed out loud multiple times. Gertie through the whole book, and I was totally here for it. But the heart in this, the found family, the determination to make things better in the world, and the ability to laugh at yourself, and that, you know, an all ages and abilities sort of things. Like, you know, her best cohorts that help her solve mysteries are women who are in their 80s. I love that. I love the series. I love this book. If you have not read the Misfortune series, start with Louisiana Longshot. It is number 1. It is worth reading. Absolutely worth reading. I gave Swamp Spies 5 stars, which is so funny because when I first started reading this, I don't like alligators. I don't like hot weather. I don't like swamps. I don't like snakes. I don't like any part of the setting of this book, but I'm absolutely in love with it. Funny how that works. The next book that I read was part of my Reading Rainbow Challenge, and this was the yellow version, and it was Her Royal Spiness, part of the Her Royal Spiness Mysteries, number 1 by Reese Bowen. And this story, Lady Georgie, Lady Victoria Georgina Charlotte Eugenie, she's cousin of King George of England, and she's like 32nd in line. And she's very poor and she needs to have money, but you know, and so the queen has hired her to be a spy, and there's some other misdeeds. And like I said, this was part of my Reading Rainbow, so I'm just going to tell my rating. I rated it 3 stars. I would like to continue it. There were a few things that I didn't care for. One of the characters in the story, she kind of made me like, I kind of wanted her to go away. But I thought it was a really good book. I know a lot of people really love this one, and I will continue with it. I'm just not in a big hurry to do so. The next book that I read was also for my Read the Rainbow Challenge. It was part of the blue entry, and that was Getting Old is the Best Revenge, part of the Gladdy Gold series. This is number 2. I gave it 5 stars. Gladdy and the gals are investigating and end up going on a cruise and talk about hilarious. Like, I got to read some funny books, you know. I had Gladdy Gold, I had Misfortune. My goodness, if you threw Laura Levine in there too, I would have just had a giggle a minute. But it was really good, so 5 stars for that one. The next one I read was The Tale of Applebeck Orchard, part of the Cottage Tales of Beatrix Potter, number 6 by Susan Whitting Albert. I gave this one 5 stars. I love this series. It is fast become one of my very favorite series. I'm sorry about the noise. Somebody doesn't know what a muffler is. Yeah. Anyway, this is Beatrix Potter is part of this story, but she is not the one. It's not being told from her point of view. There's actually a narrator, and all of the animals in Beatrix Potter's books are also part of the story. And Beatrix has, I don't see, I'm afraid of spoilers with this because there's the progressions that are happening. But basically, Beatrix has her farm in Holly Howe. She lives in Little Surrey. She really loves it. She, it's kind of her Shangri-La. Her family lives in London. Her family's pressuring her to stay there and take care of them. And she's getting older, so she can't get married because she's a spinster. And her fiance had, her fiance in the first book, this is a known story. I love the fact that she takes like real facts about Beatrix Potter and puts them in the story. Like her first fiance passed away before they got married. So, she's dealing with those feelings, but it's been several years. And in this story, I will say that it's not a murder, but someone keeps burning down parts of the Applebeck orchard. And because there's a path, like a public pathway that goes through the orchard, and the person who owns the orchard wants to block that off because he doesn't want the people walking through, and the community is saying you can't do that because it's part of, it's kind of part of the how people get from hither and yon. So the story was really interesting. Of course, the animals solved it before she did, and there's also a little bit of romance in it, which I enjoyed. Who am I? But if you have never read, and if you like, okay, I'm gonna phrase this correctly. I'm gonna need to drink coffee for this. So if you love cottagecore, animals, England countryside, farm, kind of soft living, slow paced, very world built, very like moment building, maybe even a little bit Victorian or Edwardian, you'll enjoy this. I mean, it's just like my little cottagecore girly heart just explodes every time I read one of these books. Excuse me. So yes, 5 stars. Loved it. Totally. I'm already reading the next one. I'm very close to the last in the series. There's only 8 in the series. So I'll have to move on to another Susan Winning Albert, I guess. And last but most certainly not least is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. Now, y'all, I don't read horror. I do not read horror. I did when I was young. I read Stephen King when I was in middle school and high school. I did this as a buddy read with my friend Laura from Laura Reads. If you are not a member of her channel, go check her out. She actually has 2 channels. She has her book channel, which is Laura Reads, and then St. Louis Adventures. And we became fast friends. We met here. If you have watched any of my videos, you know that we met on YouTube, found out we were neighbors. And this is her favorite author. And she bought me the book, and she's like, let's buddy read this. So, okay, I'll buddy read this. I will say the 80s nostalgia for this book is off the chain. I read it and giggled so many times because they make references to things that I remember. And I remember because I lived through that time. The 80s, the E.T. references, like the E.T. is her favorite. She's in 5th grade and E.T. is her favorite movie and she's seen it 1,000 times. E.T. was the first movie I saw on the big screen. So I totally remember like the Reese's Pieces and all of that. And she talks about how Dynasty is on Wednesday nights and Falcon Crest is on Friday nights. And I remember all of this because I lived it. So that was so cool for me. Also, the story is about a friendship between 2 teenage girls. It's Abby and Gretchen. And they're the loyalty and the confidence and the loyalty and the growing and the blossoming and the beauty of the friendship just did it for me. I just thought it was fantastic. some of the referencing to like the satanic panic in the late 80s, all of that sort of kind of rekindled some memories for me that I had forgotten about. Like I'd forgotten about the Geraldo Rivera special. I'd forgotten about some of the groups and church groups and stuff that were, you know, informing people about, you know, the Pringles cans being satanic and stuff like that. Like I remember, I have very vivid memories of that. Y'all, I have a funny story. My grandmother went to church every Sunday, every Wednesday. She was a very good, dedicated, devoted Christian woman. And I lived with my grandmother. She raised me, but this was before I moved in with her. And I remember my grandmother loved two snacks more than anything, and that was cheeses and Pringles. And when her church was talking about, I don't know if it was a sermon or if like some of the church ladies, you know how that goes. So they started talking about the Procter and Gamble cans had a moon with 5 stars, and they were like, oh, that's satanic, that's Satan worship, da 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 da. So my poor granny quit buying Pringles, and she just was like, she was devastated. I feel like that it devastated her. It broke her heart. And the minute the Procter & Gamble changed their logo on their cans, my grandma back in them Pringles. I just think that's so funny. It makes me think of her. My grandmother's been gone since 2002, and she was my parent. So just a memory that makes me smile and laugh like that just warmed my heart, made the book worth it for me. In the book, there was, I will say there are some gross parts. Like I had to kind of skim and scan through a couple of places because I'm like, no, I can't read this. And there are, I mean, there's some scary moments too. You know, it's, you know, her best friend gets possessed by the devil. I mean, that's scary, you know, and she's doing everything she can to try to save her friend, and nobody's believing her. And, you know, some of the things that made me love the 80s was in it, but some of the things that made me not love the 80s was in it too. Like, the whole classist sort of thing. Like if you were a family, if you were a married couple and you had a nice home and you made good money and you had a nice car and you had nice things and you were immediately good people, and you could do bad things, but it's okay because you come from a good family. But if you were poor or came from a single family, then you were immediately, if you were accused of something, you were immediately guilty. The kind of cast off parenting that's like, you know, Oprah used to do commercials. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Because many people just didn't. They just kind of raised themselves. It's a Gen X thing. That stuff kind of made me angry. I thought the parents in this were awful parents. And as an educator and as someone who, you know, has dealt with parents and kids, it just angered me. The book made me feel, it's definitely true. The book made me feel the behavior of some of these adults and parents, though, just, yeah. As far as the story goes, my only complaint about it was that I really wanted to know what happened. Like, I want to know, like, you know how in the Scooby-Doo mysteries, they take the mask off and they do the reflection, you know, they do the reflection of what happened. I wanted that in the story. I wanted to know the minute that Gretchen started having troubles, I wanted to know what happened, because you never really find out exactly what happened. But I thought it was a good story, even though there were some hot button topics that got me a little fired up. But the 80s nostalgia, the loyalty of the friends, and actually just reading it with my buddy Laura and us talking about it was fun. So I'm glad I read it. I really enjoyed the buddy read. And I mean, if you like horror genre, I think you would enjoy this book. It does going to give me Stranger Things vibes, except I think that Stranger Things does a better job of well-rounding the characters instead of making them like the jock, you know, the dumb jock and the rich witch. And, you know, 80s movies tend to do that. 80s TV shows, 80s book, they tend to make everybody kind of one-sided instead of letting them be multi-sided. And I think Stranger Things does a better job of like, yeah, he plays basketball, but he also plays D&D. So he's kind of a nerd, but he's a jock too. You know, that I like that a little bit more. So that was my last book, and I gave it 4 stars. If I didn't say that before, I did really like it. And if you're okay with the gore, and if you're okay with the topic, I think that you would enjoy it, especially if you're a Gen Xer or if you grew up in the 80s or familiar with the 80s. The vibe in that was really cool. And it reminded me a lot of some of the friendships I had then too. So I thought it was a good read. I think that I might actually read another Grady Hendrix. I just have to know that when it gets gory, Sonya's gonna skim and scan, because no. No, I can think of one, Beds Are Burning chapter. If you read it, that chapter, no. So, yeah, like I said, I had a really good reading month in June. I cannot believe how many books I read and how fast the month went by. And it just seems like this year's passing by so fast. And I know everybody says that, but it really and truly does. So thank you so much for tuning in and for being here with me. I appreciate you so much. All of my subscribers and the people who have been here from the word go, you all are just incredible, and I appreciate your friendship and support so much. If you're new here and you enjoy this vibe, please subscribe. I'd love to hang out with you and get to know you too. I really do try to do videos at least once a week. I do vlogs, I do book reviews. I've done some read alouds. I'm still a YouTube toddler, and I'm sort of still finding out my voice, but reading books and reading reviews are something that I will definitely always do. So if you made it this far, you are definitely a real one. And if you would leave an icon or an emoji that reminds you of summer. So as I said, thank you so much for being here. If no one has told you how much you make the world a better place just by being in it, you certainly do. Thanks again, and until next time, happy reading. Goodbye now.